Hi guys, quick update here for YouTube. It's Tuesday 30th of July 2024. Not financial advice, educational purposes. Hope everyone's doing great. So before we start, we're doing a 10% discount code on our educational courses. The discount code is called Mankind, and that'll be for the next week or so. And the reason it's Mankind is because we have made some of the greatest calls in the history of mankind. As you can see here, just recently, Moo, that's up 20x from when we were buying it in the group. The advantage of being in the group, you get access to all the calls a lot earlier than it would ever be released on YouTube. And obviously recently, Nvidia, we've got multiple group members who are up 6-7 figures on that move. That is probably one of my greatest top 10 calls of all time. Just the way it occurred, we were catching that at 40 post split or 400 pre-stock, and obviously we've already forecast exactly what was going to happen here in the Dow Jones over 7.5 years ago. So no need to listen to anyone. That was over 6.5 years ago, and as you can see here, 6 years ago there too. So no need to listen to anyone else on YouTube. Largely speaking, they don't really know what they're talking about. They're just there to sell views, and a lot of the comments and a lot of the clicks are largely paid for. So we know that already. So we're going to try and do a quick overview of where we are in the stock market. Like I said, access to the group, you get access to all the calls earlier, and really our job is to basically forecast the low, forecast the high, and that's exactly what we've done here. This to me is a major high. We were getting out of these long positions as early as 3 weeks ago, and now we're in a descending, falling market. As a minimum, this is going to come down to 5,000 in my opinion. Now and obviously certain stocks look more better than others, I suppose, but there's largely speaking, when the S&P comes down like this, most people are positioned in big tech, the top 5 or 6, and they're probably gonna have a bit of a drawdown there going into it. Now, where do we take the other side of the line from? So basically, we've been running this as an ending diagonal. We said at the start of the year, and that's been documented all over YouTube, as well as in the group, because we do twice a week videos, as well as ad hoc updates whenever we need to. We think it's an ending diagonal. As far as I'm concerned, this C-wave pivot has been in for the last 3 weeks or so, and we basically caught the exact top. We're now going to come back down again. We don't necessarily have to cross into the A-wave territory, although the textbooks would have you believe that we do. So this can literally do this, then it's all over. Time to call it a day. RFK, new president there, 150 to 1. If not, we can take out the E-wave and basically get us into this little level here. So this move down doesn't necessarily have to take out the A leg, but it doesn't matter, right? Once the top is in, anything you're doing past that point, you're playing a retracement. We're not interested in these short-term retracements because we're swing traders, right? These are really only day trading, short-term swing trading moves. Where is the larger move? Once something has topped, we've called all of these tops one by one, every single one of them, and all of the lows. That's where the greatest amount of money is to be made. If the top is in, we've called a yearly top in the group for the Nasdaq and the S&P 3 weeks ago. Other people on YouTube, they've got some kind of impulsive count. Well, good luck to them. Now, as for fibs, well, we can just take some basic fibs. This obviously hit the 50. As you can see here, well, it was a 38.2, and the 38.2 is obviously still a while away here. So I think we're just getting started here, basically. Now, they're going to blame it on big tech earnings, which are obviously due this week, but the earnings don't really matter. Once again, I mean, even the 38.2 on the log scale, are we on the log here? Make sure we're on log. Don't know why it's changed there. Let's get it back on log. Are we on log? Yes. I mean, even that's at 48, and obviously we've got the 200-day moving average, which a lot of the long-term gimps like to use. So that's not something we like to use in the group because we like to make money. So if you want to make money, take the 10% discount code, or better yet, educate yourself. Educate yourself whilst the courses are available. There's nothing like that on YouTube, and really we don't really need to go over the kind of calls that we've been making here. So we can obviously tag this to the day, so regardless of what time frame I was on, and I mean, we're a while away from that. I mean, that is also interestingly sub 5k. Well, it's at 5k exactly. So and for those who have taken the masterclass, we define what is a real high, what is a fake high, and those who have taken the masterclass know very well this high up here was a proper high. That's a very, very important call, that. Which means anything past this point, it doesn't matter. It could go all the way to 5681. Doesn't matter. The top is in. The yearly top is in. Simple as that. Now, Nasdaq being higher beta is going to fall a lot more. So we've got the same 200-day moving average, and we are nowhere near that. Once again, we called the exact top and we got out of long-term positions. I mean, that's 1579, and this retraced to the 50, give or take, as you can see. So where's the 50? I'm not saying we have to go down to the 50. That's at 13,000, and the crossover is at 16,000. So we've called the top weeks ago here, and now everyone is just following suit, but they're a bit too late to the party. No good calling a top when it's at 16,000. You're supposed to call a top at the top. That's what we like to do. So to me, that goes 14, 15,000 pretty easily. Now, most people are holding Apple. I would say Apple, largely speaking, is the most invested stock in the world right now. It's in over 70 ETFs that I can count. I would say there's a good potential this is topped for the rest of eternity. And once again, we call the eternity top. So it's not often that you call an eternity top. Let's hope we spell this right. Eternity. So that's topped for the rest of time. So if that's topped for the rest of time, as in never ever will Apple break 239. Anything that it does here is a retracement. So how low can it go? Well, it can go to the lows. Well, it can go as low as 50. Because it's impossible to top everything at the same time. And perhaps it's the log chart which is really confusing people here as to how bad this looks on Apple. But to me, that is a very, very long-term top, specifically on Apple. Now, there are other stocks which I don't want to go into because it's unfair to group members, which I don't think is top. But that is in 3 drives pattern: first drive, second drive, third drive. So you have to ask yourself, we are really struggling here. I mean, we know what happened with Tesla, PayPal, Zoom, all of these crappy stocks that no one really buys anymore. They all topped in the first crash, and that's the thing. It's effectively been a large distribution from the first YouTube video. That's why we started to make YouTube videos, because it was very clear to me 7.5 years ago, no one's got a clue. For anyone not to understand that from 7 years ago the Dow was always going to hit 40k, that's quite worrying. That's why we started to make YouTube videos, to help the world actually understand how to read a chart, and we've displayed everything here. There's nothing more that you need to know. It's extremely effective and profitable. The reviews on the course are obviously great. I mean, look at that. Tesla topped in the first crash. When is Tesla ever going to take out that high? It's just not going to happen. I don't think you'll ever see Tesla making a new all-time high again. So I think Apple's really bad. I won't go into the other stocks because it's unfair, but let's just say, Apple aside, I can give away Apple. That's fine. No one really cares. But I mean, it's done nothing. Inflation adjusted, it's done nothing 3 years ago since I sold personally. 12-year long investment. So, once the S&P gets into this region, then we're struggling. Then obviously we have to buy something, because we still think there's one more push up. Now, what's worrying on the ES, because we've caused a proper high, technically I could be wrong, and this could be the start of a gigantic correction. I just don't think we're there yet, though. We're not there in terms of the yields, of the interest rates, of the curves of the yields, what the dollar's doing. We're not quite there yet. Don't get me wrong, we're closer than we've ever been to this large crash, but to me it's always been an ending diagonal. So technically this move down is the D leg, but I don't think we're making a new high on the S&P this year. Simple as that. And that completely changes the mentality for the game plan for the rest of the year. Obviously, we would expect this to take at least a couple of months. So you're looking at Labor Day. Next thing you know, we're at the November the 5th election, where it's going to be, Kamala Harris versus Trump. For those individuals who think that those two will get elected, and for those individuals who think perhaps someone else might get elected. Who knows? Anyway, let's go on to Bitcoin. So once again, Bitcoin, we caught the low. That's what we do here. We don't like to waste our time for months. There were people here who are dollar cost averaging into all of this. We got out of long-term positions here, and we caught this low because we know how to read a chart. We don't waste our time with dead money. That is opportunity cost of 3 months. Randomly dollar cost averaging. So if you've just been randomly dollar cost averaging Bitcoin your whole life, never been able to make any money, that's what the masterclass is there. So we caught this low, added onto here, and now we're obviously looking for all-time new highs. So how high this goes depends on how one counts this. So we have to be a little bit careful of just saying randomly 100,000 or 200,000, right? We have to take things one step at a time. That's what we're doing in the group. Right now, we're around the VPOC. Well, we're past the VPOC actually. We're just kind of struggling here, trying to get outside of value. That's quite normal. In fact, we're right at the VPOC, the fairest price to do business. I thought the VPOC was slightly lower here, but on the futures, that's exactly where we are. That's very normal. The VPOC is like treacle. It's impossible for price to rip through the VPOC straight away. It has to rotate around that area for a certain amount of time, gain some momentum, gain some footing, gain some foundations ready for the next move. It wants to break out of value. It can't just do that. You can't just go from here to here in a straight line. It has to rotate. That's why it's rotating here. Fairest price to do business, where the mode of the volume is, the mode. Not the median, not the mean, the mode, the most amount of volume. That's why we call it the fairest price to do business. For whatever reason, we don't care about the reason. The market has defined 67,409, give or take a few cents here and there, as the fairest price to do business over the last 6 months. We don't care why it's this price. We just know through analysis of the volume profile, that is what the market has defined it as. It has to build some foundations, build some momentum again, and then break out the value bomb. For it to go this high, for it to come back down again, that's impossible. So we've been long since here. Obviously, there's no harm in shaving off positions here because you're dealing with risk and dynamic risk and reward. But we're looking for a move to all-time new highs. Now, how high are we going? And what's going on here with the stock market? Well, as far as I'm concerned, based on what I've been looking at here over the last couple of months, whilst this has not been historically correct, what I'm about to say, historically, Bitcoin leads the S&P, clearly. And obviously here we have some kind of divergence going on here, right? Bitcoin has bottomed on the day that effectively the S&P has formed its top. I've just said the S&P is going to 5K. So this orange line is going all the way down to here. Usually Bitcoin would lead that move down. It's not doing so. So Bitcoin clearly is acting like a flight to safety. Gold looks pretty bad. Silver looks pretty bad. Honestly, I've not properly had a look at those charts, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're going down. So Bitcoin's actually offering a flight to safety. What does that mean when the S&P bottoms? Because we've just said the S&P is in an ending diagonal. So is it the case that when the S&P bottoms, let's call it 5K, is that when Bitcoin is going to be approaching its top? Then the S&P makes a move up to the E leg, then Bitcoin comes down. Or is it the case that the S&P is just massively lagging Bitcoin massively by 3 to 6 months, which is unlikely, mind you, and then the S&P then follows Bitcoin and Bitcoin continues going high? Well, that's something to reassess later on down the line, but we need to have a game plan. 6 weeks from now, 3 months from now, that's our job. Our job is to figuring out what's going to happen 6 weeks from now, 3 months from now, like Jeremy Irons' margin call. The 2 a.m. board conference, one of the greatest scenes in human history. But anyway, let's just leave that one out there. When the S&P gets to 5K, where's Bitcoin going to be? Obviously, we need to reassess. Anyway, as a minimum, we're taking out the high, right? We define this high as a weak high. Let's just leave it at that. This is not a proper high as per what I define a masterclass high. That's why I never called a top. Otherwise, I would have called a crash to 3K from here. But I did not do that. And I told the group repeatedly, once this correction's over, which is obviously corrective, we're then going to go higher. So let's try to extrapolate some targets. Well, obviously, psychologically, it's a 100K, but we're not interested in just the psychology here of a big round number like 100K. Let's just start doing some Elliott wave. Let's just say, hypothetically, that is the 1, 2, 3, and then that's the 4. Where's the first target? Okay, well, that's pretty high, right? That's pretty high. Now, let's do some reverse extensions. because I think that's a bit of a push to get as far as that, although technically it could go as high as that. Now, more realistic targets, first of all, that's the reverse algo target, right? So we always define what is the reverse algo target, i.e. the negative or the 1.236, depending on how you've done your fibs. Obviously, I've done it from top left to bottom right. If I go the other way around, it will be negative, right? So it just depends how you do it. From usually I'm pulling from top left to bottom right. So we know as a minimum it'll get to 80k. 91k is the reverse 1.618 fib, and assuming it's a real impulse, it could go as high as 111,000. Like I said, what do we have in our benefit? What is supporting this rally? Is the fact that the S&P is falling, and we are clearly seeing a flight to safety, or at least some divergence here. So as long as the S&P is nowhere near 5k and slowly drops a couple of % every single day, every few days, it's going to take some time. This move here, surely it's going to get to Labor Day, if not Thanksgiving. People are calling for a Thanksgiving rally. Really? Usually that happens, but now we have to be very careful. Is Bitcoin going to top on the day of the US election? I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying that we've topped right now. I've given you some rough targets there for you guys just to work on. Obviously, more specific, detailed Elliott wave targets, we do those in the group. I can't share those here, but all I'm saying is to watch the divergence with the S&P, and number two, have a rough idea of where the exit strategy is. If you were to hold me down to account and say, mate, can this possibly mathematically or otherwise get above $112,000 this year, next year, or the year after? I would say no. I would say that is the absolute limit, is 6 figures up here. Between 100 and 112. I think 112 honestly is pushing it. If you had to hold me down to account, I've given the group various accurate targets somewhere around this region, because we have to be careful here. My biggest concern is the fact that this was not a proper high. So once it breaks this high and it forms what I deem as a proper high, then we have problems anyway. Because if it makes what I deem as a proper high and then it reclaims underneath, then we have problems anyway, because then we just formed an S-curve shakeout pattern swing failure. So we have to be very careful here, right? But I would say it's unlikely it's going to get above it. So how do you take advantage of the move? Well, why buy Bitcoin when you can buy Bonk? We're up 20x. It's up 3x just since the YouTube video. Has it topped? Really? Has it topped right here, right now? Is it due a bit of a short-term correction? Possibly. But has it topped? Is Moo the bull the big mascot for this entire market? Where are we in the Elliott wave count? Come and join the group if you want to know more. Take advantage of the discount code there. Now, finally, so those are my thoughts with Bitcoin. Now, finally, it's very clear, and we identified this because once again we caught the exact low 1.5 years ago here, the exact day that it occurred, then this low, then this low, then we kind of shaved out of here, and obviously Bitcoin gave us the signal not to waste our lives throughout all of this. Now, if we were to break this down to an Elliott wave count, if you're having difficulty deciphering the Elliott wave count, first of all, start from an SB, a significant bottom, which is obviously this one here. So no need to really, we do have to worry about this. It's important in the larger context, but let's just pretend none of that exists. Start the count from here, convert it to a line chart, and then suddenly, whilst the waves might not be as apparent on the candlestick chart, they're quite clear there. So could this be the count, what I'm about to show you? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, off the 3, 4, 5. Absolutely valid, yes. Doesn't mean it has to be the count, right? You can't expect a gigantic crash all the way down to, 153. However, if it is 5 waves up, it needs to consolidate a little bit. Now, we're saying Bitcoin's going to make all-time new highs, quite possibly within the next month or so. Easily. It's basically already there. we can't expect a major crash. I don't think personally Moo the bull has topped personally, and obviously we're taking advantage of the Solana chain because people have missed the Solana move. So what is the mentality? The mentality is to buy a mid cap or a micro cap on Solana. Bonk's already up 13,000%. We caught that move last year too, as well as Pepe. All of them. The only one we didn't catch was Ponke, and I got it incorrect with Donkey. I went with Donkey Kong and I should have gone with Ponky Kong. Regardless, you can't get them all right, okay? You make 80% of your money from 20% of your trades. That is the Pareto principle. We can't argue with the maths because we're operating within the mathematical structure of the stock market, right? There are some rules, right? It's just the way it is. Ask, any investment that you make. Like, since January, I would say, in the group, we've been in various trades, AMD, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Tesla recently. We've been in various trades, but let's be honest, 80% of the profits, anyone who's been following my work since January, has been made from Nvidia. That's just the way it works. You can't really argue with the maths there. Anyway, Solana, a short-term correction. I'm not expecting a miracle pullback here. Could it pull back into this area? Quite possibly, yes. That then adds the wave 2, and then we're ready to then go all the way higher again. I think, and we've been saying it for quite some time, I think it's very much possible. I won't tell you my exact targets here. It'll be unfair on group members, but I'm sure you guys can easily work it out. I think you can easily get a run up to 300 Spartans up there onto Solana. I think that's very much possible. It's not really asking much. I mean, that's not really saying much. And once again, rather than buying Solana or Bitcoin, we're taking advantage by buying a meme coin. Obviously, one has to be diversified. But, personally, I think the Solana blockchain is better than Casper, Bitcoin itself, Ethereum, Binance's tick. To me, that's like Apple. To me, I've got a super cycle count up there, and we call this on the day that it occurred. So that's the thing. There's no good calling tops after it's occurred, right? 7 years ago, we said the Dow was going to hit 40k when it was at like 12k. Truth be told, I knew when the Dow was at 5k that it was going to go there. So to me, that is like Apple. That could be an eternity top. So you have to be very careful here. Which network do you want to be going into? Binance to me has been dead for at least 7 weeks now because of that top. To me, that is a super cycle top up there, which once again, like Apple, anything that it's doing, it doesn't matter. It can go all the way to 6713 and not take out this high by 0.01. It doesn't matter. Once something has topped, you have to leg it. And if you don't leg it, this is what happens. All of these darlings from the environmental disaster of 3 years ago, they're basically giving us a heads up. This all topped in the first S&P top. Right, in the whole ending diagonal, we think we've now approached the second top. Obviously, there are 3 tops, right? It's called a 3 drives pattern. I'm not saying S&P has topped. I think it can still go to 6,670 next year, perhaps the year after. That's not the point. Not everyone buys index funds. Is PayPal going to make a new high for the rest of eternity? No. So you have to be very, very careful here. Some people are index investors, some people are ETF investors, some people buy stocks. Well, depends what you want to be playing here. Personally, I'm a stock investor and an altcoin investor because that's where the greatest amount of money is to be made, even without leverage. But look at the demise of something like PayPal. Now, all of us would agree that that's not a bad price to be picking up PayPal. But is there any volume? Is there any hype? Is there any... Well, there is probably a fundamental, there's no dividends, there's no value, it's probably still overvalued, I suppose, but surely that's a much better price than buying all the way up here. I mean, you're buying a near, 7, 8, 9 year low, but there's no volume though. So it could gravitate here, it could hold here for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe even the rest of the decade, and then make its move up. But for you to ever live long enough to see a new high, it's just not going to happen. So a lot of this stock market has died a long, long time ago. Many, many years ago. It's just the fact that it's been sucked into these stocks. I mean, look at that. Greatest top 10 call in human history. Now, I don't want to cover this because it's unfair on group members, but once again, we called the low at 400 and here, got out here, back in here, bomb. Right? Didn't get the exact tops, but we made advantage, and this was really the big move here. That's when all the group members made a killing, and we identified that if you wanted to make money, it had to be Q1 mainly and half of Q2, and now look where it's going. How low is that gonna go? To me, that goes much lower than where it is. We have a buy targets here on Nvidia coming up soon, but Apple is one I'd stay away from. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you want to know more, come and join the group.